In 2008, director Jon Favreau and star Robert Downey Jr. changed the course of cinematic history with a fresh take on a maligned genre.
In 2025, we try a whiskey that really tests the theory that Tony always has the good stuff.
The film is Iron Man.
The whiskey is Ancient Age.
And we'll review them both. This is the Film and Whiskey Podcast.
Welcome to the Film and Whiskey Podcast, where each week we review a classic movie and a glass of whiskey. I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
Brad, I gotta be honest with you, man. I haven't seen you in a while. It's been a minute. It's been about 2 weeks since we've recorded an episode. And, sometimes life gets in the way of you and I talking to each other. And the podcast is a great mechanism for us just to touch base. So I'm very glad we're doing this episode today because I miss you. I miss you, man.
What I hear you saying is you really don't have anything to say about the podcast, and you're hoping we can just vamp about our lives for about 20 minutes.
Yeah, let's just do a debrief on all the stressors in our lives.
Yeah. My wife is 32 weeks pregnant, so...
She sure is, man.
That is...
how's everything going, dude?
Really good. Yeah, we're excited to have baby number 3, but pregnancy, turns out, very difficult. Who knew?
You don't say.
I feel like every time it's like those last 10 weeks are just like, oh my gosh, dude. She's a champ. She's incredible.
Yeah, man. That's awesome, dude. I'm glad to hear everybody's doing okay. Let's talk about Iron Man, a movie that I want to say Where are you, Tony? You couldn't even wait for me to finish that sentence. You just had to sneak one in there, man. I want to say that I have revisited it like at least once since we watched it back in 2019. Because Carrie and I, during the pandemic, went through all the MCU movies. So I know for a fact I've seen it at least once. I was like absolutely sure that you and I had already done this episode. Like I remember us talking about Iron Man again. Yeah. I don't know if that was just imagined or what, but I guess it's been like more on the front of my brain than I anticipated. I was excited to revisit it this time. Brad, before we dive into, all of our Brad Explains type of stuff, general thoughts on where things have gone in the Marvel of it all from the last time we talked about this movie to now, because I felt like we were really riding high in early 2019.
Sure.
And my opinion of Marvel could not be any more different today.
I mean, how can you judge Iron Man based on everything that's happened since? I think one of the fascinating things for me coming back to this was realizing that this was not a Disney property, that Marvel had formed their own entertainment division, had basically like gambled almost all the rights to their IP away in order to make a cinematic universe. And so, they financed the entire thing themselves. They're not, they're a comic book company. They weren't a huge deal back then. It's fascinating to me that this was not a Disney property. And I think you can see some elements of that in the filmmaking. I will say, to actually answer your question, Bob, I've barely paid attention to the MCU since the Winter Soldier. So,
okay, cool.
And it definitely has.
We watched Endgame for the podcast, so I'm assuming you skipped from Winter Soldier to Endgame at least, right?
Well, I probably said this on our Endgame episode. I watched the Winter Soldier and walked out of the theater. Was like, wow, that was really good. That was one of the better MCU movies. And then the next one came out, and I had zero interest. Just did not want to see it at all. And around the time Endgame was coming out, my buddy Steven, who's really into Marvel, got me to watch maybe like 4 of them, like, Civil War, Black Panther, a few of the other, Infinity War, a few of the big ones. So, I would say that I am caught up well enough on the original 10 years. anything since then, I could give a freaking rip, dude. I do not care at all.
Now, I will say, like, as much as I am, like, morally opposed to what Marvel has done, and my motivation to go see these movies is, like, in the negatives now, I'm still not opposed to, like, watching a superhero movie. And there have been a couple times where I've just, like, tagged along with folks and then been pleasantly surprised by a movie I probably otherwise would not have gone to see. But, you know, it does make me remember a simpler time when we were just able to watch what seemed like a one-off superhero film and get excited about the possibility of maybe they'll make a sequel to this because this one worked pretty well. And not this sort of like obligatory, whether or not this works, we are making 8 sequels to it and you have to see them all or you will be lost a year from now when the next Avengers movie comes out. Yeah,
man. When I was watching this, you know what movie I was reminded of most deeply this time around? The second Spider-Man with Sam Raimi.
Yeah. Yep.
Which you and I have agreed is like in the pantheon of like...
It's the one of the pinnacles. Yeah, for sure.
One of the pinnacles of superhero movies. I think that this movie reminds me of it where there's money behind it, right? It's not quite the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man, which you can tell is a little bit of a shoestring budget that they maximize and make a great film.
Yeah.
To me, Iron Man feels like you got a little money here. You've got an up-and-coming director in Jon Favreau. You've got Robert Downey Jr. basically playing on the final year of his contract, like playing for his next contract. There's a lot going on here that make this a really well-regarded film. And I'll go back to what I said earlier, that it feels like they were playing with house money. They're not messing around with all the Disney corporate stuff. There's no, here's the type of humor you have to have, and here's the color scale you're allowed to use, and all that. Like, this movie is bright and bombastic and funny, and I don't know. I think I'm kind of stuck on the fact that this and the Incredible Hulk were made before Disney bought the entire superhero industry. It seems like.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you take a dive down the Wikipedia rabbit hole, which I had a half hour to do today, the official story of the MCU, right? So I don't know if this is how it happened in reality, but this is how they've presented it, is that the MCU was concocted behind the scenes by Kevin Feige, who was at that time like the vice president of Marvel Studios. Now, Marvel Studios launched on its own because they basically decided like, hey, we want to have a production studio and we want to be able to have control over the characters that we haven't licensed out yet, which included X-Men, Blade, and Spider-Man that were all licensed to other studios. They realized, hey, we actually still own all the rights to the entire Avengers crew. Why don't we start making our own movies and just finding distribution partners? And so Marvel Studios gets set up as the first big independent production studio since DreamWorks in the 1990s. And yeah, this movie, when I clicked play on Disney Plus, and the first thing I see is a Paramount logo. It was very weird. I totally forgot about that. But yeah, you're right. Disney had not gotten in bed with Marvel Studios yet. But the official party line on this was like, they had the MCU in mind in terms of like, we want to give these characters a one-off movie leading to a crossover Avengers film. I don't know how true that is. Maybe it's completely true. But I do think that it still undersells how much rested upon this one movie. Because if this movie was a flop, obviously they're not going to go forward with it after this. Yeah. And so I don't think you can overstate how important this first Iron Man movie was to what they were planning behind the scenes. Now, for you and I, like the end user, the consumer of this movie, it felt very much just like a one-off superhero movie, which is what we'd been getting to that point. Like, yes, there had been Spider-Man sequels. Yes, there had been X-Men sequels and Blade sequels, but every time a new superhero movie came out in the early 2000s, it was like, now let's try this. Let's see if this one works. Here's Daredevil. Here's Elektra. These both suck. You know, like here's some Fantastic Four. It kind of sucks. That's just how it went at the superhero multiplex.
And that's why I said at the start, this is kind of a maligned genre up until this point, right? Like, yes, everybody loved Batman in '89. It's a terrible movie, Bob. And all of the sequels after it somehow were worse. And beyond that,
that's spicy. That's a spicy take, Brad. It has its defenders, and I think Batman Returns is better. But please go ahead. I won't undermine your point. Please.
There's very few examples of lots of superhero movies doing well. Like the first X-Men, pretty good, decent. X2, pretty decent. X3, it just falls apart. Spider-Man 1 and 2, really good. Spider-Man 3, garbage. Elektra, Daredevil, like all of these movies are not doing the superhero genre any favors. And if we're being honest, like Batman Begins, is it a superhero movie? Kind of. Does it have the vibe of a superhero movie? No, like it's a Christopher Nolan movie.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, so much is riding on this film, and Robert Downey Jr. and Jon Favreau walk in and just hit a grand slam. Because I can tell you, out of all the movies we've reviewed on this podcast, we haven't done a ton that were like new releases in the mid to late 2000s that were like hyper popular, things that I saw, right? Really, like Casino Royale, this, I can't think of many others. And I remember walking out of the theater from Iron Man being like, that was one of the coolest movies I've ever seen. I loved this when I was 17, I think, when it came
100%,
out.
100%, dude. And we will for sure get into all of this versus The Dark Knight and the cultural impact of both and how they're inextricably tied together, but also taken very different paths, I think, in the last few years. Before we get into all that, Brad, I think it is time for our first segment of the day, which we call Brad Explains.
Brad's gonna give us the movie plot with only 60 seconds ticking on the clock. So let's go ahead and hear your take with this little segment that we call Brad Explains.
Brad Explains is the part of the show where Brad breaks down the plot of the movie that he has just seen, at least for the second time. Brad, how many times have you seen Iron Man 2008?
Iron Man's probably higher on my list because I saw it when it came out. I probably watched it at least once or twice between then and the podcast. And now I've watched it twice for the podcast. So probably 4 to 6 times, I would guess.
And you know what? Like, I'm not tipping final scores here because I think that this is like a very well done example of a very specific type of superhero movie.
Sure.
Right? Like, what a superhero movie has to be today in terms of like holding up the structure of the MCU is very different than what was expected of a superhero movie 18 years ago or whatever it's been, right? Yeah. And I think that this is like a pleasant, well-made movie that is perfect for viewing like 4 to 6 times. Like, I don't know that I would choose to watch this movie like 7 or 8 times or however many times I've seen it, but it's just like, sure, like this is on TV. I'll see the final showdown and then I'll watch baseball after that. It's like a perfect movie for that, dude.
Bob, you just described something that never happens anymore. People don't just watch TV randomly and see a movie on. They stream things.
They especially don't watch baseball.
They definitely don't watch baseball.
You know what made me say that, though, is I just got the ESPN notification that the Guardians game started a little bit ago. So I was like, oh, baseball's on. Yeah, why not? Let's wrap this up. I got to watch baseball, man.
Yeah, our 6-game losing streak.
Oh, my gosh, dude. All right. So, Brad, you have 1 minute on the clock to break down the plot of Iron Man. I forgot we were
still doing Brad Explains.
Come on, man. 1 minute and go.
Iron Man is a film that follows the exploits of the one and only Tony Stark, who is a super genius playboy billionaire inventor who is captured by a militant group in the Middle East. They use his skills to try to recreate a weapon system for them, but rather he creates the Iron Man suit, escapes from the cave he was being hidden in, and is saved by the U.S. military. He returns to the U.S. He tries to change his ways to make his company do a better job in the world, tries to track down shipments of weapons that are going to the wrong people. And in that process, he discovers his closest friend and mentor, Obadiah Stane, which is a great freaking name. Stan Lee knew how to name his villains, man. Obadiah has betrayed him and is trying to sell weapons to ne'er-do-wells behind his back, and it leads to a climactic confrontation in which we get the best Jeff Bridges that has ever graced a cinema near you.
All right. I got a couple quick hitters here. I'm pretty sure the last name is Obadiah Stane, Stane. However, I thought about Ben Stein playing Obadiah, and I would like to see that. That's
perfect.
Tony.
I don't think he's here today, Mr. Stane.
So I'm going to be honest with you, dude. I did not grow up reading comic books, and I thought that I could probably guess what the origin of Iron Man was. Not just in the writing, but like what his actual character story was. And when you're dealing with superhero movies from the early 2000s to the mid to late 2000s, like they always are fiddling with the actual comic book to make a good movie out of it, which I'm totally okay with. I don't need my movie to follow comic book lore because I don't care, right? What I come to find out, though, is this is actually an extremely faithful kind of broad strokes representation of the Tony Stark story. So he's developed in the later stages of the Vietnam War. Stan Lee has honestly been accused of being very pro-war with the way that they like framed the Tony Stark character, which was deeply unpopular at the time because people were really against the Vietnam War. But it's the same broad strokes. Tony Stark, weapons manufacturer, goes to do a demonstration in, I believe, Vietnam, or some analog to Vietnam, gets captured, escapes, becomes Iron Man. Brad, I'm going to be honest with you, dude. Like, I obviously know how this movie goes. I know that there's this big like Afghanistan terrorist cell escape that is the framing device of the film. And it's funny because I feel like when we reviewed this in 2019, like that still didn't seem very dated. Like the idea of having a guy get captured by terrorists and have to escape still felt kind of like, yes, this is timely. And it's weird now, man. I don't know if it's just because of all the stuff that's happened since then and COVID and everything else, but I'm like, wow, this really feels like that kind of post 9/11 few years we got where like anything that was based around like espionage or the military, it was all Middle East centric and they were always fighting terrorists. And it made this movie feel like extremely of a time. And that we're not really in that time anymore. I don't know how else to say that.
Yeah, I think it definitely, my brain moved towards, I don't think they'd be allowed to make them the bad guys anymore. And like part of that is just like Hollywood politics and how they view the world. For me, it definitely did in the same way that it did for you. I was like, yeah, this feels like it's of a time period. And I recently watched American Sniper again. And so like my brain was kind of already in that 2008, like military, Iraq, Afghanistan mindset. So it didn't like throw me off, but it was something that entered my mind where I'm like, yeah, I don't know if they would do that anymore. I don't know what they would do. But at the time,
we've
made
come
a lot of
full
sense.
circle. Like, it's not the 80s anymore, but we've come all the way back around to, like, let's just make the Russians the bad guys again. And, like, I feel like that's what it would be today, right?
I feel like Russia's activities in the last few years have helped make them the bad guys in pop culture again.
No argument here. It's just, like, it's just funny because I think we could just return to, like, having Ivan Drago be the bad guy, which they basically did in Iron Man 2 with the Mickey Rourke character. So there you go.
Exactly. Dude, this is a complete aside. I saw an interview that was from like the Russian Minister of Information or something did with like MSNBC. And they were talking about like, will Putin meet with Zelensky and stuff? And like every time the Russian Minister of Information said anything, I was just like, I'm sorry, man. It is too ingrained in the American consciousness not to hear that accent, that thick, deep accent, and be like, he's the bad guy.
Oh man, the downloads in Russia are going off a cliff right now, Brad.
I'm so sorry, guys.
That's why we didn't do the Film and Vodka podcast, Brad. But listen,
Film and Vodka.
I will say though, so I was kind of in a similar vein where I was like, oh, this is interesting, like how black and white they are painting the, I mean, they're terrorists, dude. Like, of course they're bad guys. And when Tony Stark holds a barbecue with them at the midway point of the movie, I'm like, great, like let's burn some terrorists. That sounds awesome. But I'm thinking to myself, man, does this end up being more like rah pro US military than I even remembered it being? And I will say, like, I don't know if it's because because of Hollywood politics and they just didn't feel like they could do that, or because they actually did want to make it a little bit more complex than that. They do a good job, not necessarily of like implicating the US military. Like they're always talking about like, we're the good guys, but they do a really good job of like interrogating the idea of the military industrial complex. And like, I honestly was kind of impressed by the idea that these terrorists are obviously like doing horrific, barbaric acts on people and deserve to be killed, right? But they're ultimately like, they are the Darth Vader to Jeff Bridges' Emperor, right? Like there's somebody pulling strings behind the scenes that is even more powerful and even more insidious and sinister in a way, because it's in his best interest to just continue war profiteering. I found that like, I don't know why, because it's not like it's hidden in the movie. Like that's the plot of the film. I had just forgotten that they did try to kind of layer some of those things in. And it kind of gets back to that Dark Knight conversation we had about like how they were folding in Patriot Act surveillance stuff into this late era Bush movie. And I don't know, man. I think that what I came away with was that Iron Man actually dealt with some more kind of knotty issues than I remembered it dealing with.
Yeah, the fact that you follow the arc of this character in Tony Stark of billionaire, playboy, like philanthropist, engineer, like this incredible guy who's very immature, and the entire arc of his maturity is around realizing that he's not actually in control of the world around him. He's not actually in control.
Yeah, his arc is like, what if we didn't shoot bombs at people?
Yeah. It's a great arc, man. Yeah. Well, and he says, like, there's certain points of the film where he says, until we figure out where these are being shipped, we're going to stop. And it's this implication that we're still going to support good around the world through the use of force, but we're going to figure this out. And I like that. Like, really, it's kind of an idea of like corporate CEO accountability, of like the importance that business leaders know what's going on within their industrial machine and take care of business if not great stuff is going on. Well, that's a pretty good message.
Yeah. And Tony Stark is both the CEO and the Luigi Mangione who gets to kill Jeff Bridges at the end of the movie. So it's great because he gets to play both roles, right? It's a real yin yang we have going on.
Oh, man.
All right, dude,
to be fair.
Go ahead.
Pepper Potts kills Obadiah
She does.
Stane.
She does. She was just following orders, though,
Yeah. Are you insinuating that Luigi Mangione was just following orders, Bob?
Listen,
is this breaking
news? Who knows
news?
how deep this rabbit hole goes, Brad? All right, so I think I'm pulling up my phone here because I took a screenshot from the Wikipedia. Quite famously, obviously, Robert Downey Jr. was trying to restore his image in Hollywood after like severely crashing out with his really, really bad addiction story. He'd gone to rehab and now had been working in smaller films. I guess the most famous of which would have been Shane Black's movie Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. He was in Good Night and Good Luck in 2005 and was trying to reestablish himself. Really wanted to convince Jon Favreau that he could take this part. But before they landed on him, they were considering, people of lesser stature, kind of up and comers in Hollywood or people kind of on that B tier. And Favreau had been quoted saying, like, Iron Man is the star of this movie. Like, you don't need a big star in this part. So some of the people that they considered, Brad, were Jim Caviezel, which I think would have been terrible. Like his stock and trade as like, I played Jesus. I play humble. I play quiet. I don't play Tony Stark. Like Jim Caviezel would have been real bad. Timothy Oliphant, who I actually think would have been fantastic in this role, Sam Rockwell, and Clive Owen. Now, Sam Rockwell obviously does get a part in Iron Man 2. He had been the one that had moved farthest down the pike with this before they got Robert Downey Jr. I say all that because Robert Downey Jr. has now been in 148 movies as Tony Stark. And I think sometimes we forget that just nailing the casting here kind of opened up the entire MCU. He is very, very great as Iron Man. But there's almost so much to talk about there that I really don't know what to say anymore. It's kind of like Johnny Depp with Jack Sparrow. Like, it was great and it was inspired casting. And by the 8th time I saw him in that role, it was like, okay, like I you know what I mean? Like RDJ is great in this movie. And I kind of want to talk about him now so that we can get to people I'm actually more interested in talking about in the movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think RDJ sets himself up for the success that he gets. I did find myself throughout the film, you can't watch this movie clean anymore. Like when Jensen, his friend in the cave, says to him his final words, like, don't waste your life. Like make something of yourself.
Oh, yeah. I had a moment because I was like, oh, he doesn't waste his life.
Right. And like, you can't help but think about the end of Endgame. And it's this beautiful moment that prevents you from being able to just be present in the film, but it also connects it to these 10 plus years of his character and the entirety of the arc. And so I think that's a beautiful and sad thing to not be able to go back and just appreciate it for what it is. But there was many moments throughout the movie that I found myself going like, that's going to pay off later. And I don't know. Did you find that like taking away from the film for you?
No, I did find it enhancing the film, but you're right in that you have to add like another layer of, I'm not going to let myself think about that. I want to see what they're doing with the character in this self-contained movie. Yeah. And it is kind of cool that he's still on the path to figuring his stuff out at the end of this movie. Yeah. Like he's always going to be Tony Stark. His personality is his personality. He's always going to be selfish. He's always going to be cocky, but it's in his conscious choices to not be selfish that you find character growth. Yeah. And I think, you get the first steps towards that in this movie, which is fulfilling enough in itself. Now, Brad, if we can move away from RDJ to talk about the other folks in this movie, because when you use the words much maligned, I feel like we have given Jeff Bridges a very particular kind of reputation with this movie, which is, I think, very unearned because the vocal effects that they put on his voice at the end of the movie are not his fault.
Yeah.
And let's get it out of the way now. They turn him into the Kool-Aid Man at the end of this film.
Yeah.
That's essentially what they're doing here, right?
Yeah. He literally just bursts through walls and is like these bright eyes and
Tony.
Dude, I love Jeff Bridges in this. I think he's an incredible villain.
Listen,
even
Jeff Bridges, go ahead.
Even the Kool-Aid Man of it all, I think makes for a good villain. Like he is caricature, and it stands out. It makes for a great villain at the end of the film. And when he looks at him and goes, "Now die, you pissant," I'm in, man.
Yes, I'm on his side now. All right, so here's the hottest take I will give on this episode, Brad. Jeff Bridges is one of our great actors. He wins an Oscar, I think, 2 years after this movie is released, which is well-deserved. He had been doing great work for decades, and he comes from for a movie called Crazy Heart. Okay. Good movie, good performance. Not my favorite Jeff Bridges, but is more of a career win.
Yeah.
Jeff Bridges comes from, his dad was an actor, his brother is an actor. He's really great in so many things. And I think that Marvel almost blew it because they put him in the very first movie and then he dies. Because what I came away with this time around was that Jeff Bridges acts circles around everybody else in this movie. There's a scene right after Tony comes home from Afghanistan and blows it at the press conference, then goes and hides by the arc reactor. And Jeff Bridges comes to find him. Now, at this point in the movie, you don't know that Jeff Bridges is the bad guy, or you're not supposed to, right? Now, you do think that he has the best interest of the business in mind, and that he's also very concerned about, like, what's going on with Tony's mental health. And the way you see him kind of poking and prodding and trying to figure out, like, is this guy mentally unstable? Is he putting my business in jeopardy? What's he actually getting at? And then when you come to find later in the movie, you know, he has ulterior motives. To watch all those things go across Jeff Bridges' face in that scene, it's like an interrogation that's being presented in the friendliest terms possible. And I was like blown away at how he could juggle all those different things, especially when I come to find out, like, if you read the Wikipedia, the script for this movie was like not done when they were filming this movie, and they just encouraged the actors to improvise a lot. So how much of that was improvised, I don't know. But RDJ, I think, is perfect for the character of Tony Stark, but he's also very stuck in the Tony Stark like category. Like, he has to behave certain ways at all times. And Bridges is kind of able to, when he wants to go big and choose scenery, he can do that. When he wants to play a little more like cards to the chest, he can do that too. I was really, really blown away with him this time around, man.
Yeah. I think the scene that you referred to when they first really talk after Stark comes back from captivity, the playful back and forth where Jeff is like poking and prodding, but both of them know he's really there to ask about the miniaturized arc reactor, but they still play the game for like 45 seconds before he finally like gives a tiny little crack in his facade and goes, all right, Tony, show me what you got going on in there. And it's the way he sees it and immediately reaches forward and starts buttoning up the shirt and just goes, hey, Tony, we're going to keep this quiet for now. How about we just lay low? And you can tell that he got what he wanted and is like moving on, and he smooths off his shirt. The interplay between them as actors, the chemistry is off the charts. I think RDJ does a masterful job in that scene as well. Dude, I am with you. Jeff Bridges this time around was just
He's
so
the MVP of the movie
good.
For me, man.
When he walks in on Pepper Potts trying to steal stuff from the laptop, his little monologue as he's walking around her. Oh, dude, it's so freaking good, man.
I often forget how good Gwyneth Paltrow is, too. Not just in this movie, but just as an actress. So she becomes, again, comes from Hollywood royalty in some ways, and she becomes famous making these kind of smaller movies for Miramax in the mid-90s. I believe she gets nominated for an Oscar. Her big breakout is in the movie Emma, and then she does Shakespeare in Love. When I was a kid, I didn't realize that Gwyneth Paltrow wasn't British for a long time, because I just remember seeing her in movies where she plays a Brit.
Yeah.
And so then you get to a movie like this, and it feels like, is she trying a career like revamp? Is she slumming it in this comic book movie? And it really allows her to be a little bit looser, to not have this kind of like buttoned up persona in her movies. And they don't give her a ton to do in this movie, but especially that very last little scene where Tony's getting ready to go out and do the final press conference, and he's asking her, you know, do you remember that night? And they do this great thing where they have her like buttoning her shirt and she just looks up at him. And it's like, oh, the chemistry's off the charts. She's playing this moment perfectly. I think that what makes this movie click is that it's like the worst parts of it are like a 7.5.
Yeah.
And they just nail the casting in some really key areas, and it just elevates the movie so much more from there.
Yeah. And especially given what you said earlier, there's no script. Like, yes, there was a script. There was broad brush stroke ideas of where they were going and probably some dialogue they really liked. But so much of this movie was improvised that you have to have that chemistry. And I think the chemistry between pretty much all the major players, like between Jeff Bridges, Gwyneth Paltrow, and RDJ is really good. I think that, I don't know what the actor's name is, but the gentleman who plays Agent Coulson, Like,
oh yeah,
his and Pepper Potts chemistry is perfect. Like, they just nail it together. That moment where he puts the explosive on the door and she's like, "Oh, what's that? Is it like an electronic hacking device?" And he just goes, "You might want to step back a little bit."
Yeah, step away.
It's just, there's so much perfect little bits of comedy to things like that. I still though think, I'm like, what kind of world do we live in, that at least does Hollywood live in, that they're like, hey, we're staking our whole reputation as not just a studio, but as this like comic book entity called Marvel.
Yeah.
We're staking it on this movie and we didn't finish the script.
Yeah.
Like, who greenlit this going like, yeah, you know what? We don't have a full script. Let's just go do it anyways. Like, how many of us work in a job that you could just be like, we'll just make it up as we go?
I wonder how much they were inspired by the story of Tony Stark, who, as Jeff Bridges reminds us, was able to build this in a cave with spare parts. Dude, so good, dude.
What a great line.
It's so good, man.
It's so good.
Brad, this is a good point for us to hit pause. I think we should drink some whiskey, a whiskey that we have not tried in a very, very long time. What do you say we get into this ancient age?
Let's get to it, man.
All right, so today we are checking out Ancient Age 10 Star, which is just
not 9 stars.
It sounds like the kind of whiskey where, like, if you took the name of a real whiskey and then ran it through Google Translate to Chinese and then back to English.
Yes.
Ancient Age 10 Star. Yes.
Like Ancient Age 10 Star. My friend did that. He had what was it? It was a copy of Star Wars where it was like, had been translated fully. The subtitles had been translated into Chinese and then back into English. And they kept referring to the galaxy as the silver spoon in the sky. And it's just incredible, man.
That's awesome, dude. So in researching Ancient Age, a whiskey we have not had since, I believe, 2019, I learned quite a bit, Brad, that I did not know. Important context, I think. And I'm going to be reading directly off of a website here. So this is unverified, except that I quickly Googled, is this true? And Google said yes, but like, who knows? This is from a website called...
When has Google been wrong, Bob?
Yeah. When has AI overviews ever been wrong, Brad? This is from a website called thewhiskeycloset.net. So again, if I'm wrong here, it's not my fault, but this sounds correct to me.
It's their fault.
So this is what they say. For the uninitiated, it might seem like Buffalo Trace makes, owns, and has the rights to everything distilled at their facility. But you might be surprised to find out that isn't the case, because back in 1983, a company called Age International purchased what was then known as the George T. Stagg Distillery, which is now called Buffalo Trace. Under the watch of then master distiller Elmer T. Lee, Ancient Age Distillery and Lee created Blanton's, right? So a few years after they make Blanton's, everything that was using that mash bill, which is now called mash bill number 2 from Buffalo Trace, was sold off to a Japanese company called Takara Holdings, who then immediately turned around and sold the distillery back to Sazerac, but retained the rights to all of these brands. So they own the rights to Blanton's, Elmer T. Lee, Ancient Age, Rock Hill Farms, and Hancock's Reserve. Now, these are all actually distilled at Buffalo Trace, but they're technically made by an entity called Ancient Age Distillery. So Buffalo Trace has the sales and distribution rights, but they don't actually own those brands. I never knew this. This is very interesting to me.
Bob, if that doesn't just illustrate the BS of marketing and all the backroom stuff that goes on in the liquor industry, I don't know what will convince you that what you're drinking is BS. And keep going.
So anyway, I just thought it was interesting. Under all those, banners, the Elmer T. Lees of the world, the Blantons, is Ancient Age. Now, Ancient Age is, again, made using this same mash bill, but it is like the lower tier version of that. And you have an 80 and 90 proof ancient age, and then you have what's called ancient age, which was at one time the 10-year version of that. They have since lowered that age statement to a non-age stated, which is why the name went from 10-year to 10-star. Instead of just taking off the 10, they're like, we're going to make this part of the name now. Apparently, at one point, it was like 6 years non-age stated. Now they're saying it could be as young as 3 years old. Brad, all that to say, I don't have super high hopes for this, but there are people out there that swear by this as like the value alternative to a Blanton's because it is made from the same mash bill.
Right.
There's my spiel for the day.
I'll just spoil it. You are unable to buy this in the state of Ohio at a 750 milliliter amount. It is only sold in the 1 liter or 1.75 liter. So if that gives you any indication, I think it's as George Washington intended. Yeah, that's what he wanted for his Americans.
All right, man, let's go ahead and dive into this. Again, this is the famous mash bill number 2 from the Buffalo Trace Distillery, clocking in at 90 proof. No age statement on this. Brad, what are you picking up on the nose of ancient age?
Bob, this is like cherry. It's kind of butterscotchy. It's kind of astringent and young. I think I can smell like the residue of 10 stars twinkling within the glass. This is like okay. It's not great. It's not bad. I'm going to give it a 5.5 out of 10 on the nose. There's not enough here to like get me pumped and excited. But there's some like very basic, decent flavors that we have going on.
I think it is important. You know, we try not to always let the price of something or the value of something color the actual tasting experience. In a situation like this, where we're drinking 3-year-old whiskey that sells for $22 around thereabouts for a 1 liter, that's like a $16.50 750 ml. So like I'm drinking $16 whiskey. And I think for $16 whiskey, the nose on this is surprisingly complex. I'm with you, man. There's a lot of cherry, like dark black cherry on this for me. There's some great brown sugar notes. It's got quite a bit of oak, but it smells older than what's probably the youngest component of this. I like this quite a bit. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 on the nose.
I think for me, the palate is the highlight here. It reminds me of like a cherry yogurt. It is pretty oak heavy. And there's a little bit of baking spices kind of going on. It's like a pleasant experience on the palate. I'll give it a 6.5 here.
Oh, I actually like this quite a bit more than I thought I would. I will say the front of the palate for me, there wasn't much going on, like at all. It almost had like kind of a tart sour cherry taste to me. And it was super duper thin. It wasn't until it hit my mid palate and the back of my palate that any spice level came out. If you had told me this was 80 proof, I'd probably believe you. Because I think the only kind of spice notes you get aren't from ethanol, but they're from that kind of oakiness. I wonder how old, Brad, the oldest whiskey in this blend is. Because I think there's definitely some character to this that you don't typically get, you know, even on like a benchmark, which we just had a couple weeks ago and is a Buffalo Trace product. This tastes a lot more well-aged than that. And again, I'm colored by the fact that it's $16 here. But I think I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 again.
I was going to say, man, I hate to say it, but I think you're scoring this higher than it deserves. I'm just going to be honest with you.
That's fair. Well, then balance me out, dude.
2 out of 10. This is the eternal sunshine of the whiskey world. I think the finish is not good. Like this is the one point where I just go, it dissipates quickly. It's got a sickly cherry cough syrup vibe. The oakiness takes over. It's not an impressive finish for me. I'm at a 5 out of 10. It's not like horrific, making me question my choice to ever drink whiskey, but it's a 5 out of 10.
I'm going to give it a 5.5 on the finish. I think the thing for me that's actually keeping my scores a little higher here, Brad, is that there's this underlying note of like simple syrup. There's just a little touch of sweetness on everything here. So even that Robitussin note on the finish, it had a little bit of syrupiness to it for me, which kept it from getting like too bitter and making, you know what I mean? Like making me not want to take another sip. It is just a 5.5 for me, though. And when we get to balance, because of that dip on the finish, I think I'm going to come down to a 6.5 on balance. This is a perfectly passable whiskey. I do think if, I can tell you don't like this as much as me. I don't know that this would make a great mixer. It's not bold enough to really pop in anything. And I think if you're going to drink it, then neat is the way to go here.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you. I'm at a 5.5 on balance. I just don't think there's anything here that makes it really stand out. Now, I will say $19 for a 1 liter in the state of Ohio. I'm guessing that's the price across every one of the states. I'll give it a 7 out of 10 on value. I don't think it's a bad value. You're getting an extra 250 milliliters. It's $19. If you want a cheap whiskey to drink, why not get Ancient Age? 10 star. It's not going to hurt.
There's
your
10 stars,
pocketbook.
Brad.
There are 10 of them. How could I say anything? You know what? This is a 10 out of 10 across the board. It's going to get 10 stars from me, Bob.
All right. It's been a couple weeks since we've had Benchmark, and that comes from a different mash bill, I believe, at Buffalo Trace. I think that this is a better whiskey than Benchmark is. The regular Benchmark. Now, some of those like top floor, full proof are definitely better than this. I think I like the flavor profile of this better than regular Benchmark.
Man, I think I would lean towards Benchmark.
Okay.
I think, it's a little bit cheaper. You're looking at like $13. And I remember the flavor profile being a little more classic, like caramel, baking spices, black pepper. And I think I just enjoy that more than like the cherry Robitussin flavor.
I get that. I am going to come out to a 7 out of 10 on value here, Brad, which brings my final score to a 33 out of 50. Now, I know that I'm going to be higher than you, but that does fall short of the 35 mark. So, even as a guy that likes this whiskey, it's not a great whiskey. It's just a pretty solid, cheap bourbon for me.
Yeah, I'm coming out to a 29.5. I would say if you're doing what do we call it? The springtime of swill.
Yeah.
Way back in the day.
Oh man, I forgot about that.
Yeah. If you're doing a springtime, summer, autumn of swill, whatever it is, go check out Ancient Age 10 star. It's not going to disappoint you for the price that you pay. It's not going to wow you for the price that you pay either. So
no. Yeah, I think that's a category that's pretty much reserved for us with Rebel Yell 100 now. It just is what it is. All right, we're coming out to a 62.5 out of 100 or a 31.25 out of 50, which I think is a pretty appropriate place for this, given that we did like it on the value scale. Brad, are you going to recommend?
Only with the caveat of what I just said. If you want cheap whiskey, this is a great option for you.
Yeah, I think you could do a lot worse on the cheap whiskey side of things than this.
Yes.
And we believe Canadian us, Mist. We have tried them. All right, man. Let's get back into talking about Iron Man. What do you say?
Oh, let's get to it, man. All right, everybody. That was Ancient Age 10 star. This is the pinnacle of whiskey, Bob. Am I right?
If we could ever get our hands on a sample of Ancient Age 10 year, I'd really actually like to try that. I think that'd be really good, man.
Yes, yeah. I would be fascinated to try that.
But in lieu of that, Brad, we're going to do something else here at the moment. It's something we haven't done in a couple weeks. It's our game, which we call Two Facts and a Falsehood.
Brad is going to try to stump you, Bob. Two are right and one is wrong. Two facts and a falsehood.
Two Facts and a Falsehood is the part of the show where Brad presents me with 3 items as fact about the making of this movie, one of which is a complete lie. Now, we took last week off from Two Facts and a Falsehood because Bilga Ibiri was here and we wanted to just kind of sit at his feet and glean some wisdom about the Tree of Life.
What a great
I will
dude.
Claim that automatic victory all day, every day, Brad.
Yeah, it's all yours, man. I never let it be said that I'm not a generous man.
Well, I'm sure that you came armed today, Brad, with some Iron Man facts, knowing that, we hadn't done this in a while, and also that I could not care any less about the MCU. So I am kind of like ripe for the picking here today to get myself a loss. Brad, hit me with your 2 facts and a falsehood.
Fact number 1. Producers Avi Arad and Kevin Feige, when working through their product placement contracts, asked Feige's kids, Eric and Ella, for input on what burger Tony should eat after his time in captivity. Fact number 2. The character Obadiah Stane plays on the piano a musical piece that was actually written by 18th century composer Antonio Salieri, who is best known, obviously, as a jealous rival of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Fact number 3. The sound used during a target lock-on in Iron Man's heads-up display is the same sound as the laser cannon firing in a 1978 Space Invaders arcade game.
All right. Number 3, I don't care about. So I'm just going to let that set aside. We're going to say that that's true. I don't care.
How often has that served you, Bob?
I don't care, man. Brad, when it comes to me winning this game, 60% of the time, it works every time.
Every time.
So
that's right.
For me, it's either 1 or 2. Now, as I was watching this movie, I did notice the Burger King burgers appearing multiple times throughout this film, which made me chuckle because I'm a big fan of the Steven Spielberg movie, The Terminal, as you know, which had some insane Burger King product placement in it. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, man, Burger King was really going for the Hollywood burger placement in the 2000s.
Yeah, dude.
I don't know how well it worked out for them, but I love a Burger King burger. Are you a fan of Burger King?
I haven't eaten fast food in a while. I will say, when we were in college, Bob, the buck double at Burger King, I could go to Burger King, spend $3 and get 2 double cheeseburgers and $1 fry.
Yep.
And I was like set. If I want to do that now, it'd be like $9.
The thing about Burger King, the charbroil flavor is just better than everybody else. Yep. And the kind of cheese that they use in between the patties gets meltier than everyone else's cheese. And it's just freaking love a Burger King burger.
I would say Burger King definitely is the superior burger. My buddy Steven and I actually have we'll go to 2 fast food places and get a McFlurry and a Frosty or just a double cheeseburger at both places, or their chicken sandwich, and do our own little, all right, McDonald's or Burger King on the chicken sandwich.
Yep.
Burger King is, I would say, the best burger.
I agree. All right. So that's number 1. Number 2 on your 2 facts and a falsehood list. It could be real. It sounds a little too cute. And it also references one of the 12 movies that you've ever seen. So I am immediately circling that as a Brad G.
Bob, we are
possible invention.
10 seasons in to a 32 movie per season podcast. I've seen at least 290 odd movies since we're redoing season 10.
Well, you've seen Amadeus twice now, so I know that it's kind of fresh on the brain too. In fact, Brad,
Amadeus.
I do kind of hope that it's true, but I'm pegging it as the falsehood here. So I'm going to say number 2 is the falsehood, just because it sounds like something Brad would make up.
Yeah, you're wrong, Bob.
No!
You're a loser, Bobby. No. Bobby, you lost.
Now die, you little pissant.
What a great line, dude.
Dude, we need to just start saying that to each other.
Please tell me that that's the one line that wasn't ad-libbed by Jeff Bridges. That was no. We've got to stick with this line.
They handed him the script, and it was 120 blank pages, and then just page 121 had that line on it, and that was it.
Also, how does Jeff Bridges not be able to say manufacture? Did you notice that? Twice in the movie he goes, manufacture.
Yeah, why not? Listen, when you are the CEO of a weapons manufacturer. You can call it whatever you want, Brad.
Fun fact, he is actually playing Antonio Salieri's music in that scene.
That is really cool. That's a nice little Easter egg that I would never have noticed. What was the falsehood?
Number one was the falsehood about his kids helping pick between different competing burger franchises.
Well, the funny thing was I almost selected that one because the way you phrased it was that they sought their input, but then you never said like who they suggested. Like, yeah, they sought the kids' input and they all said Wendy's.
Yeah. Which you and I have talked about. If they sought our input, no Wendy's.
Wendy's does not season their meat, dude.
I will give them credit. When they slather their meat with cheese and bacon, I can get down with a Baconator. I'm not opposed to a Baconator.
The Wendy's spicy chicken sandwich is like S tier.
It's really good.
Wendy's burgers, not so much. Yeah.
Even just like whatever their basic like $2 chicken sandwiches is a good chicken sandwich in the realm of fast food. But the spicy chicken one, that's good stuff, man.
So good.
Can we just talk
we're supposed
about
to be
fast
talking
food?
about Anchorman, or I said Anchorman. We're supposed to be talking about Iron Man. I don't even remember what we're doing anymore, dude.
Iron Man?
Oh, man. All right, dude. Let's jump back into talking about this movie. There is one actor we did not touch on, and that was Terrence Howard, who we've talked about a few times in the history of this podcast. I think most notably on our episode about Crash. Yep. I got to be honest, dude. I have gone to bat for Terrence Howard in specific roles before. He's not good in this role. Like I don't buy him for a second as a member of the U.S. military. And to be honest, I'm very glad that he got replaced by Don Cheadle moving forward because it just does not work. He's the one part of this movie that does not work for me.
He's supposed to carry the sense of gravitas and like a little bit of charisma as somebody that could hang out with Tony, and he doesn't do either very well. The only moment in the whole film I like him is when he's faking being drunk and like talking to Tony intensely in his ear while these like sexy women are dancing in front of him. There's something about that scene that just made me laugh really hard. And you're like, no, that felt like an accurate Terrence Howard. Based on what I know about Terrence Howard's personal life, I feel like that same conversation would happen, but it'd be a weird math conversation.
Yeah, it'd be about like astrophysics or something that he doesn't know much about. Yeah.
Yes.
100%, dude.
Yeah, not a big fan of Terrence Howard as Rhodey. Don Cheadle is so much better. So much better.
I want to talk a little bit, Brad, about the fact that this was made outside of the Disney MCU, and it was made before the sort of churn of we have to get one of these out every like 9 months started kicking in, because the special effects in this movie hold up remarkably well. Like this movie looks great still.
Yep.
And honestly, the only parts of this movie that I found looked really fake were the interior of some of the like Afghani caves, which you could tell like the walls were not real. Sure. But even then there was like a tactility to it. And I'm looking at the way the movie's lit. There's tons of shadow. There's a lot of like really harsh light at parts. It looks like a movie, and it is completely different to that sort of washed out, low contrast. Everything is gray. Everything is shot in a parking lot that you get by the time the Russo brothers take over. And it's again, because like they have to film a certain way on a blue screen so that there aren't any real elements that make it more difficult to make the whole background CGI. And if you have really harsh lighting, that takes away from it. So what are we going to do? Flat lighting all the time. Yeah. It's much easier to manipulate that in post. And this one is like, yes, I'm sure that there was a ton of green screen somewhere in this movie, right? But like, you can't really tell, because I really think that they went so all in, especially in the first 2/3 before it just becomes two guys in suits fighting at the end of the movie. They went so all in with like, we're going to shoot on sets. We're going to have real sets built. There is going to be real things blowing up. When Iron Man is firing a flamethrower, it's not necessarily going to be CGI flame. Like there's going to be real things on fire with smoke coming off of them. There's just such a sense of tactility to this movie that later MCU movies just do not have.
Yeah, it completely departs from it, and it loses the impact that like the human brain and soul recognizes real when it sees it. And you have it in spades in this movie. And I do think it's one of the reasons why this stands up in my mind as one of the best MCU films, is because the effects are very much so a mixture of CGI and practical. And it is kind of that I've seen it many times over on YouTube nowadays where people are like, why is CGI so bad nowadays compared to like 2008 to 2015, where it feels like it was way better? And you can look at Avengers in 2012, obviously a ton more CGI, still much better CGI than a lot of stuff that comes later.
Yes. Listen, dude, like, I think the only thing from Endgame that's going to hold up in 10 years, and I don't even know about this, but I was going to say Thanos, but like, there is something uncanny valley about Thanos that I feel like 10 years from now, maybe it's going to look real weird to us, but like, the thing about the way that they've done the MCU now is 98% of the shot is CGI, and then you just have like a human face pasted on.
Yeah.
And when you're like in the movie theater and you've been watching that for 2.5 hours, you don't notice it anymore.
I thought you were going to say 2.5
But
decades.
if I'm ever like scrolling Twitter and I see a clip of Endgame kind of come up and like drift across my screen, I'm like, that looks like there's something in me that immediately is like, that looks so weird and so off. And I can't put my finger. It's uncanny valley, right? Like,
yeah.
And it just looks so shitty, dude. Like so much of these movies are not going to stand the test of time. And I feel like it, like, you know, the way we shouldn't punish Iron Man for what happens after it, I almost feel like we shouldn't give it too much credit because we're just praising it for being a movie. But I think now when you look back and see what we have versus what we had back then, it's like, oh man, remember when these were actual movies, when they felt like cinematic?
Yeah, and man, that the word cinematic has been thrown around for, you know, the last 10 years. Is like, what does it even mean anymore? I do think there's something real about the word cinematic, that it has to be something that we as humans can relate to on a normal level. And we just can't relate to CGI. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feed the human soul in the same way as seeing something that's really on fire or exploding or whatever it is. And like, to go back to what we talked about way earlier with like The Dark Knight, like at the end of the day, man, he really blew up a giant hospital. And like, Heath Ledger really was walking away from a giant explosion, getting in a bus, driving away as this whole building came down.
Yeah.
That's freaking cool, and it's going to stand up the test of time.
For sure. All right, man, I think that's a good point for us to segue into our last segment of the day, which we call Let's Make It a Double.
We're near the end of the episode, so thanks for listening to the Film and Whiskey Show. Let's pair another film with this one, even if it's a struggle. It's our final segment of the day, now let's make it a double.
Let's Make It a Double is the part of the show where we pick a movie to pair up with this one to make the perfect double feature. Brad, I'm kind of flying by to the seat of my pants today, because it's like, we could just do The Dark Knight. We could pick any Marvel movie.
Sure.
I'm still kind of mulling over mine. So why don't you go first and give us your Let's Make It a Double?
Oh man, I do think that Batman Begins would be a good option. I think that it's kind of the origin story superhero movie. It's set in a similar era. I don't know, man. You know what? The other movie that I'm thinking about, I'm going to pick just because I want to. I'm going to pick Pacific Rim because I want more people to watch Pacific Rim, and it involves human beings piloting mechanical suits of armor, and you should go watch Pacific Rim. It's a blast.
I was really worried you were going to pair this with like Zero Dark 30 just to go with the like weird terrorist theme. And so you could sneak a leash reference into this episode as well, as you typically do.
You brought it up, Bob. You're the one who's gonna get caught, not me.
You know, I think I'm gonna pair this with a movie that we really haven't talked about and should probably put on a later season, which is the Coen brothers 2010-2011 remake of True Grit. Because I think that movie freaking rips, first of all, and it's another great Jeff Bridges performance. And I just we've barely ever talked about Jeff Bridges, and that's one of my favorite Coen brothers movies. So I think you could do a lot worse than watching this and True Grit back to back. I
actually saw that in theaters, Bob.
Good movie, dude.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it a lot. Matt Damon,
we'll
right?
Put it on Matt Damon, Haley Steinfeld.
Yeah.
Good
Great
flick.
Let's do it.
All right. So from Brad, it's Pacific Rim, and for me, it's True Grit. I don't know. That's a weird double feature. Why don't you just watch those two and not Iron Man and see what happens after that?
Yes.
All right, dude. Let's do final scores here. I think that we have done a good job of placing this in historical context. It's an important movie because, for better or worse, it kicked off the MCU, which has effectively ruined movies forever. It did. I can't blame this movie too much because this is a movie and it feels like a movie.
Yep.
I also can't give it too much credit because it's a good movie. It's got its flaws. Yeah. But it's a perfectly fine, way above average movie that I enjoy the hell out of. I think I'm going to land at an 8 out of 10 on Iron Man, Brad.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the reason this movie works is because it has an incredibly charismatic performance from RDJ paired with a emotionally impactful story of growth. And when you see Iron Man grow into who he is and try to become a better person, and when he stops Pepper Potts and he goes, "Listen, you stood by my side when I did all my BS all those years. And now that I'm finally trying to fix all the wrongs that I unknowingly committed, you're going to leave?" And then she turns around and basically is like, "Yeah, but you weren't in danger then. And now you are." It's moments like that illustrate the emotional depth behind this movie of the love and the growth that I really do think Iron Man nails so many classic storytelling tropes in a unique and interesting way that make it such an effective film. I'll give it an 8.5, Bob.
All right, cool. So that brings our average to an 8.25 out of 10. I think that's a perfect place for this movie, Brad. I don't know that it deserves to be talked about as any sort of all-time classic, but it's a lot better than your run-of-the-mill superhero movie, especially has become nowadays. All right, but we'd like to know what you guys think. Iron Man 2008, where does it rank on your MCU rankings? How would you pit it up against Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight? You can let us know on any one of our social media accounts: Facebook, Twitter, or X, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. Here on YouTube, just below, at Film Whiskey.
It's been X for a while now, Bob.
I feel like we've Twitter, bro.
I feel like we've hit the point where it's are we really still calling it Twitter?
We're being contrarian at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Wherever you want to find us, you can, including our Discord. We are on Discord every day talking to you guys, whoever wants to chit chat with us about movies, whiskey, all sorts of other things. So if you want to join the conversation, you can find a link at the end of every single one of our show notes.
I want to give a quick plug for our Patreon. You can join our Patreon at 3 different levels of support. At all different levels of support, you get early access to every episode we release, and you will get bonus content that is only available to our patrons. If you'd like to learn more, check us out on patreon.com/filmwhiskey. Brad, next week, we will be back with another movie that has seen much press in the 6 or 7 years since it's been released. We're talking about the Best Picture winner, Green Book. So we went from The Tree of Life to Iron Man to Green Book. I'm super excited to dive into that one with you, man.
Yeah, that is a wild trio right there, Bob. Really excited for it.
All right, we'll be back with that one next week. But until then, I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And we'll see you next time.